First, we couldn't date people who had opposite political beliefs. Now we can't even date them if they have no opinion at all. It's enough to make you lose faith in finding true love on a reality streaming series. And if you jilt a guy for not thinking enough about Black Lives Matter, just tell me this. What have you actually done that made any more of a difference in any black life than what your inadequate ex-fiance did? I asked Senator Adam Schiff here last week when the subject of Trump's sliding poll numbers came up. Okay, but how are the Democrats going to blow it this time? This is how. Posturing, purity tests, the politics of I unfriend you if you're not exactly with me 1,000%. Barack Obama used to preach that the perfect is the enemy of the good. Yeah, it's also the enemy of getting laid.
You'd think by now the Democrats would have gotten the message. After all, Bill Maher has unleashed enough scathing takedowns to fill an entire highlight reel. But no, they're still desperately clinging to their so-called brilliant strategies, the same tactics that led to one of the most humiliating political disasters in modern history. And Maher? He's not letting up anytime soon. He just tore into the DNC again, exposing their gold medal-worthy hypocrisy with ruthless precision. And unsurprisingly, it was absolute fire. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it.
Here's what happened. The bride, an impressive, attractive nurse named Sarah Carton, walked out on her dream wedding to sales consultant Ben Mazenga. They were at the altar, all dressed up, almost to the part where they eat cake and do the electric slide. When Sarah broke the news to her man that she just couldn't go through with it. Had he cheated on her? Abused her? Was he a folk-singing Irish vampire? No, it was because of Black Lives Matter. Because if there's one thing we know about the young liberal women of today, it's that they are very, very high in their standards about everything. And Ben, while no racist, had not done the work on this issue.
Nope, this isn't some twisted fairy tale or a satirical sketch, and no, your ears aren't deceiving you. This actually unfolded on the reality show Love is Blind. Honestly, sometimes you have to stop and wonder, how did we even get here as a society? A woman walked away from marrying a genuinely decent guy, not because he said something outrageous, not because he had a dark secret, but because he didn't have a perfectly rehearsed TED Talk ready on Black Lives Matter. Forget love languages, apparently now it's political declarations or nothing. Yep, welcome to the era where swiping left isn't about chemistry, it's about hashtags. Of course, Bill Maher, never one to pass on a juicy dose of cultural absurdity, dove right in with his signature blunt, unfiltered take. And as expected, it was comedy gold.
And that's when Sarah realized she'd rather die alone. Because love isn't blind, it's woke. Well, now, to be fair to Sarah, it wasn't just Black Lives Matter. Ben also didn't have much to say about the vaccine. And his position on trans was basically, I don't know, I guess. Sarah's sister is gay, and when she told that to Ben, Ben said he had, quote, no discomfort around that community at all. Not good enough, Ben! I think what you meant to say is, fuck yeah, I fucking love.
These days, it's no longer about character, financial security, or, heaven forbid, laying the foundation for a stable society. Nope, that's all considered passé. The new gold standard for love and marriage, being the wokest in the room. Kindness, loyalty, actual compatibility, those are relics of a bygone era. What really counts now is how many trendy buzzwords you can shoehorn into a conversation, and whether you flawlessly recited your performative allyship checklist. It's as if basic common sense has become a disqualifying trait, and if you're not marching in perfect unison with the latest wave of progressive groupthink, you're apparently unworthy of love. The left's ever-shifting criteria for relationships and marriage have veered from idealistic to downright ludicrous. At this point, we're not dating real people. We're auditioning for roles in someone's ideological fantasy, and spoiler alert, blink the wrong way during a social justice chat, and you're getting ghosted.
Let me tell you, folks, if the standards on the left are going to be this high, and politics is going to be this much of a cock block, we're never going to win elections or have any more babies. This inclination from certain liberals to always and immediately excommunicate instead of communicate is what makes them so unlikable. And I'm sorry, Sarah, to make you the poster child for this, but come on. I mean, look at this stiff. What'd you expect?
And Bill? He doesn't sugarcoat a thing. He lays the blame squarely at the DNC's doorstep, like an unwanted Amazon package nobody's willing to claim. According to him, they struck the match that ignited this entire woke wildfire. Remember the pre-election days when some women wore armbands to proudly declare themselves anti-Trump voters? That wasn't just a political statement, it was a dating ultimatum. No Republicans allowed. Apparently, love came with a voting requirement. And the Democrats? They didn't just allow it, they fostered it. They painted Trump as a fascist and, by extension, implied that anyone who voted for him must be marching in ideological jackboots. The fallout? A hyper-polarized culture where dating across party lines is now treated like an act of betrayal. And guess what? That kind of extremism didn't unite the country, it drove people away. It played a part in delivering one of the Democrats' most crushing defeats last November. But have they taken a moment to reflect, to recalibrate, to reconsider? Of course not. They've doubled down. Because nothing screams brilliant strategy like making the same mistake twice and expecting a standing ovation.
Hey, you're a much better person than he is. You win. And by win, I mean lose. Christ, first we couldn't date people who had opposite political beliefs. Now we can't even date them if they have no opinion at all. It's enough to make you lose faith in finding true love on a reality streaming series. Because if you're going to eliminate every 20-something who hasn't thought a lot about politics, you're going to be working from a smaller pool than roadies with no leg tattoo.
And sadly, it's only spiraling further. It's no longer just about refusing to date someone from the opposite side of the political aisle. Now, even being politically neutral is a deal breaker. That's right. If you don't come armed with an activist-approved stance on every trending social issue, you're instantly labeled part of the problem. Silence isn't golden anymore, it's grounds for cancellation, or at the very least, a painfully awkward first date exit. This hyper-politicization of personal relationships isn't just socially draining, it's dangerous. It's creating a culture where echo chambers are now prerequisites for romance, and ideological purity tests have replaced authentic human connection. The long-term fallout? It's not just bad for dating apps, it's bad for democracy itself. If people can't even share a meal without political tension boiling over, how can we possibly expect them to come together to solve real pressing issues? For the DNC, this is a public relations disaster unfolding in slow motion. By pushing extreme tribalism under the banner of progress, they're not just alienating their political opponents, they're driving away the apolitical middle. And when you lose the middle, you don't just lose the argument, you lose the country.
Because if you're going to eliminate every 20-something who hasn't thought a lot about politics, you're going to be working from a smaller pool than roadies with no leg tattoos. And let's be clear, Ben didn't say, you know, I have thought about Black Lives Matter and I'm with Derek Chauvin. No, he said, I'm young and dumb and full of fantasy football stats. Could we just talk about it? I'm sorry, I'm not up to the part of my life yet where I give a shit about the issues. Should he? Of course. We all should do a lot of things. I should meditate and finish Moby Dick and learn to get to sleep without a gummy.
Sure, having strong opinions is great. Who doesn't enjoy a spirited debate over coffee or the occasional passionate Twitter rant? But here's what the Democrats seem to keep missing. A large portion of Americans simply aren't consumed by politics 24/7. They're not out here waging ideological wars. They're trying to pay their bills, raise their kids, maybe catch a Sunday game, and carve out a little peace and quiet in what's supposed to be the greatest country on earth. They're not looking to be lectured at every turn, or shamed for not memorizing the activist flashcards of the week. For them, politics isn't a lifestyle, it's background noise. So when the left insists on shoving its ideology down everyone's throat, it doesn't inspire admiration, it breeds resentment. Most people don't want to be guilt-tripped into activism. They want a stable economy, reliable jobs, safe neighborhoods, and the freedom to live without constant moral scrutiny. If the DNC continues to ignore that reality, they're not just alienating voters, they're driving them straight into the arms of the opposition.
Maybe Ben hasn't turned his life over to being a social justice warrior yet because he's preoccupied with trying to get his life going. Possibly because he's worried about having the means to support the woman he thought he was going to marry, who seems rather demanding and particular. which is kind of how it is these days. Did you know that on Bumble, only 15% of the women are willing to date a man under 5'8"? Wow. Women, they're like roller coasters now. You must be this tall to ride them.
But you know where all this absurdity truly began? With the relentless hatred for Donald Trump. The media's nonstop crusade to demonize him didn't just critique his policies, it practically turned him into a cartoonish supervillain, an orange-skinned harbinger of doom sent to destroy democracy, decency, and, somehow, brunch. For nearly a decade, left-leaning outlets have painted Trump as the embodiment of all things evil, a walking crisis rather than a political figure. And guess what? It worked, at least to some extent. Almost half the country has been conditioned to view him not as a former president or even a rival, but as an existential threat. The DNC didn't just oppose Trump, they weaponized the animosity. They used it to energize their base, rake in donations, and shame anyone who dared question the prevailing narrative. It wasn't always like this. Remember when George W. Bush was president? Sure, he had his critics, but voting for him wasn't treated as a moral transgression. Political disagreements were just that, disagreements. But with Trump, it turned personal, tribal, and outright toxic. So what changed? The answer's simple. The left discovered that fear and outrage are powerful tools for control and loyalty. But in exploiting that strategy, they may have shattered political discourse. And now, they're scrambling to pick up the pieces.
You've all been told that you can have it all, and you're a queen and a lady boss, and that bitch. But maybe your judgy ass is no prize either. And if you...
At first glance, you might think Maher was simply mocking the bride, the one who left her fiancé at the altar for not being sufficiently woke. And to be fair, he probably was. But listen a little closer, and you'll hear something deeper. A pointed critique aimed squarely at the Democratic Party itself. For years, Democrats have positioned themselves as the moral compass of the nation, the enlightened few, perched atop a hill of progressive virtue. In their narrative, they're not just a political party, they're the country's last hope, the saviors, the heroes, the chosen ones. And if you're not marching under their banner, well then, clearly you're ignorant, regressive, or just some poor, misinformed soul clinging to the wrong side of history. This superiority complex has become so ingrained in their identity that compromise feels like betrayal, and disagreement is treated as blasphemy. They've built such a thunderous echo chamber that they can no longer hear the millions of Americans who aren't asking for lectures, they're just asking for common sense. And now, in a twist of irony, one of their own, Bill Maher, is calling them out for it. Because when you start treating half the country like second-class citizens, you shouldn't be shocked when the votes start slipping through your fingers.
If you jilt a guy for not thinking enough about Black Lives Matter, just tell me this. What have you actually done that made any more of a difference in any black life than what your inadequate ex-fiancé did? I asked Senator Adam Schiff here last week when the subject of Trump's sliding poll numbers came up. Okay, but how are the Democrats going to blow it this time? This is how. Posturing, purity tests, the politics of I unfriend you if you're not exactly with me 1,000%. Barack Obama used to preach that the perfect is the enemy of the good. Yeah, it's also the enemy of getting laid.
Bill wraps it all up neatly, unsurprisingly tying the blame right back to the Democrats. His message is crystal clear. The DNC would do themselves a massive favor by stepping down from their high horse of moral superiority and actually engaging with everyday Americans. You know, the folks more worried about paying rent, putting groceries on the table, and keeping their families safe than attending the latest ideological boot camp. Instead of preaching from an ivory tower, they need to start truly listening, really listening to the daily struggles of working-class people. Build a message that speaks to them, not at them. Because until the Democrats stop alienating the very voters they claim to represent, they'll keep watching elections slip through their fingers. Moral posturing might get applause on Twitter, but it doesn't win over the truck driver in Ohio or the single mom juggling 2 jobs in Arizona. If the DNC wants to stay relevant, they'll need less arrogance, more authenticity, and a hard-hitting reality check, courtesy of Bill Maher. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our fiery videos.